Time being 7 o'clock, I call to order the September 12th Franklin School Committee meeting. Meetings are recorded by Franklin TV and shown on Comcast Channel 11 and Verizon Channel 29, as well as recorded by Franklin Matters. Any individual who also wishes to record this meeting must notify the chair in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20F. First on the agenda, we have our pledge, if everyone wouldn't mind standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As is customary, we will now pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, moving on, routine business, review of agenda. Review of agenda looks...
Spencer?
Oh, we had a pledge student?
We do, but you've already you were talking to our pledge student before the meeting began, so it's
shoot.
actually okay. You already started. Don't stress. I have the write-up.
No, we're going to do it again.
Oh, man.
No. Okay, no,
That's
no.
okay.
It's my meeting, and we're going to do it
Hey,
again.
it's your meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
You definitely want to honor
Yeah.
more than usual.
Okay, tonight's pledge student. All right, rewind. Ahan Shetty, our own senior. He is our Franklin High School senior class president, member of DECA, and captain of the mock trial team. In his spare time, he volunteers and mentors middle school band students. He enjoys learning and problem solving. His teachers describe him as hardworking, creative, responsible, intelligent, and respectful. Ahan has been instrumental in the positive start to the year that FHS has had. He's looking forward to enjoying his friends during his last year at FHS. All right, Ahan, if you wouldn't mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was the best one we've ever done. It was. All right. Review of agenda. Agenda looks okay to everyone. Payment of bills. Mr. McNeil?
Bills are in order.
All right. Payroll's all set. And now we have our student reps here. I'm so sorry. But we're so excited that you guys are back. We missed you this summer.
It's good to be back. And yeah, we're happy to be back in school. Obviously sad that summer's gone, but we're excited to be back at school. So to give a little update about how the year started at FHS, to me, it's been a good start to the year, a good start to my senior year last year in Franklin. To give a little bit of information of what's going on in the school is FHS will be hosting a club fair next Thursday during the students' lunch block. At this club fair, many of the students, including the freshmen, can learn about I think it's like close to 40 clubs that FHS offers, and they can get insight into what they may want to join during their time at FHS and see what they're interested in. Mock Trial will be hosting an open meeting to all this Thursday from 6:30 to 8. If anyone's interested in auditioning for the team, they can go to that meeting, get more information, and see if they're still interested, and go ahead with auditioning for the team. And Han's one of the captains here. Picture day for the high school students will be on September 20th and 21st during the day. Curriculum night will be hosted on Thursday, September 28th from 6 to 8. This is where parents can meet their students' teachers and have a little chat with the teachers about like how the year is going to start. If anyone from the high school is interested in auditioning for the jazz band at our high school, they can contact our band director, Ms. Redsid, for more information about that. With the freshmen coming in this year, they'll be holding student government elections. They can currently pick up nomination forms from their house office, and to do that, they need to get signatures from their classmates and signatures from their class advisors and an assistant principal in order to run. And those forms are due September 18th. Looking ahead a little bit, we have our homecoming dance on Friday, October 6th. And this year it's going to be outside again, like how it was our sophomore year. And the homecoming game will be the day before on that Thursday night at home against Taunton at 7 o'clock. And ticket sales for the Legally Blonde, which is a Franklin High School theater production will go on sale October 1st, with the production being in mid-November.
Thanks, Sid. To give a sports update about what's going on at Franklin High, we've kind of picked up right where we left off, and that's really good. The volleyball team had a 3-set win over KP last night. The football team had an electric win on Thursday night against Wachusett. The boys' soccer season started off 2-0. They're also off to a great start, and the girls earned the win in their opener against OA, and now the record is 1-1. For our senior class, we want to point out that graduation is no longer on June 7th. It is officially May 31st, so update your calendar if you need to. Senior photos have to be submitted to the yearbook by October 6th, and also anyone that would like to submit a baby photo for the yearbook also has to submit it by October 6th. That is on a first-come, first-served basis, so get that in quickly. And any senior that wants to submit a senior quote, we'll also do that by November 1st. For the class of 25, the prom venue is booked for May 3rd at the Lakeview Pavilion. That's a brand new location. Typically we would go all the way in Randolph, but this actually is in Foxborough. So that'll be exciting for the junior class. And also PSATs are held on Saturday, October 14th, and anyone that wants to participate in that can register.
Filled report. Thank you guys
Yeah.
so much. Does anyone have any questions, comments? No? All right. You guys are welcome to stay, or you can get out of here.
Awesome. Thank you.
We did miss you though, but it's late. Go home.
It is.
All right, Mr. Gier.
So this year, as Ahan and Sid said, they are seniors, and as is tradition, we have juniors invited to join the student reps to represent the junior class, and then that allows us to have some continuity between student reports. So we have 2 juniors who will be joining us at various points during the school year. I know that Ahan and Sid and these 2 folks, these 2 students have been working with Mr. Han to determine who is available depending on the school committee meeting night. So the 2 folks that we are welcoming will be Ella Mahoney, who is a junior. She's the class president, and Sawyer Whitmore will be joining as well as the junior class vice president as well. So we want to welcome Ella Mahoney and Sawyer Whitmore. They'll be joining us throughout the school year, okay?
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, superintendent's report.
All right, so the opening of school, the academic year of 23-24 has officially kicked off at Franklin Public Schools with a lot of activity and some additional heat that folks were really resilient around, particularly our students and our teachers and our staff and leaders. We welcomed back for over 4,600 students, 800 faculty and staff with great excitement. The FPS leadership team and staff worked tirelessly to ensure that our facilities were ready, that the classrooms were set up, ready to welcome students, that the opening day activities were planned, families were communicated with, and colleagues were met and professional learning took place, which folks participated in. So I want to thank everyone who contributed to that to make this year a successful start for our students. We began by welcoming our staff on Monday, the 28th, with a breakfast and gathering followed by some opening remarks and some staff recognitions. And then our staff transitioned to their respective schools for building-based kickoffs with their school leadership teams. On Tuesday, we began with the Office of Teaching and Learning with some messages from that office around district improvement goals, which you'll hear a little bit more about tonight. And we also had our keynote, Mirko Chardon from Novak Education, return for his 2nd year as the keynote, and he focused on universal design for learning and the principles related to that with MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support, which is a continued goal. The staff then participated in a variety of professional learning activities tailored to their level and their role. I'd like to express my gratitude to everyone, our leaders, our teachers, our students, our families, our entire community. You as a school committee all play a pivotal role in us opening, and I'm really proud to be leading this district in this capacity in my 2nd year, and I'm really proud to be working with the admin that we have in this room as well, who were instrumental in helping get this off the ground. Mrs. Morano, Dr. Rogers, Dr. Dutch, everyone in the crowd that you'll see that we'll introduce later, and you as a school committee for your support, so thank you. Hiring update, we included An update in your packet, we have successfully hired all teachers. There are 0 teachers left to hire at this point. Our ESPs from the August 22nd was the last time we provided an update. We had 21 vacancies. We are down to 11 across all levels. And we are still in search of an AP at Keller Elementary, an assistant principal. And in non-union, we are from 5 positions down to 2, and those are interventionists that we continue to post and try to hire from. I want to thank our administrative team, particularly our assistant principals and principals at the building level, for their work to not only post, but to screen applicants, invite and schedule interviews, put a team together, develop questions and ratings, then recommend based on the follow-up of those meetings, and go through an entire process. And sometimes we do that and we don't end up with a recommendation for an employee. So we have to start over. So I just point that out as a process that we go through in Franklin. So when you see numbers where things aren't filled, sometimes we don't recommend to fill because we didn't do that, but that doesn't mean we give up. We keep trying, and I want to thank everyone involved with that work, because we're trying to hire the best people to put in front of our kids. But I am pleased to report that the numbers continue to go down and we continue to fill positions. It's not easy. It's a competitive market. There's not as many people applying for jobs as we described last year, but we continue to try to do that and bring the best people into the district. I have a migrant housing update. As we previously shared with our community, Governor Maura Healey in Massachusetts declared a state of emergency for the ongoing migrant crisis. As referenced in the press release from the town of Franklin, Franklin was one of the communities that has been asked to aid those displaced from their homes. So we were informed from DESE, which is the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, that Franklin would be a long-term temporary housing shelter at one of our hotels within town to welcome families. Families are joining us on a staggered basis. And there are 100 units, and right now 35 of those units are occupied, as shared by the town administrator last week at the town council. And approximately 25 of those folks are school-age children in those families. As a public district, we have a responsibility to provide education and educational services for all children in our community, regardless of their background and their circumstances. So we are currently collaborating with our town departments and with our staff and local departments to ensure that we collaborate to enroll students, register students, and work to get them educated as we have a responsibility to do so, and welcome students into our schools. The DESE notified us that state will be providing some funding assistance to school districts based on the number of students that are enrolled through a metric. And as we do with any student who enrolls in our schools, we must protect the privacy of individuals. So I know there's been questions around where students may be attending or what class they'll be in. And just like with any student who we would enroll, we wouldn't be providing that out publicly. But I am trying to be as transparent as possible and provide you with the information that would be helpful. We anticipate that our school communities, regardless of where students go, will welcome new families, and particularly our new students who'd be joining us for this school year, and we will continue to provide updates as more information becomes available. It's a bit of a rolling admission. It's a bit of a evolving situation that we are trying to do our best to make sure that we do it systematically. The DESE guidance was to open schools for your currently enrolled students while families are placed in the hotel, and that's what we've done. And at this point, all of our students who are returning from Franklin, who were with us last year or who moved over the summer, have entered school and have begun school, as we've talked about. And now our focus is making sure that we transition all new students, whether they are coming from migrant housing or have just recently moved. We treat all students the same regardless of their circumstances or backgrounds. So I'll pause there for any questions. Actually, I have one more update, and then
Yeah,
you can.
go ahead.
Okay. The last piece is around lifelong learning, and I had a conversation with our middle school principals today. More information will be shared later this week around the idea of clubs and activities and how that will look and how that'll be structured. Just to remind folks, in the spring of 2023, the middle school club offerings and the late bus were eliminated in the FY24 budget, and as a result, the extracurricular and after-school offerings would need to be run differently. So through lifelong learning, There were a few pieces that remained. One, ski club. Folks who've been a part of ski club would know that is still running through lifelong learning. A World of Difference, the peer leaders program that we offer, meets during, it will meet during flex period during the day and will be continue to roll at our middle schools. Will continue to run at our middle schools. Unified basketball, in partnership with the Special Olympics and the FHS Unified Sports Program, will be offered, continue to be offered, takes place during the basketball season, roughly a little bit after the basketball season starts, so it's the winter. And as I said, we, and Jazz Club offered for those folks that are in the music program enrolled through lifelong learning. So lifelong learning this year is organizing some of these efforts. More information is still unfolding over the next few days, and we hope that, folks can anticipate that an email with more information will come in the coming days as some other decisions are verified. But that's the information that I had that I felt like we've nailed down to share with folks, and recognize that middle school clubs are an important part of our community and an important part of our after-school life for students. And unfortunately, we're in the position where they were eliminated in the spring, but that's not something that we hope will be a permanent measure. But at this point, that's how we've had to structure the after-school clubs or activities for students, which is through lifelong learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jagir. All right, anyone, questions, comments? Dave?
Thank you very much. I want to start actually just with the staffing update. Thanks for especially this breakdown too. This was really easy and helpful to kind of read, to kind of suss out all the information. And kudos to your entire team. You know, because I know we're looking over here, and August 8th there was 45 vacancies. You know, not only kind of are where we are today, but also where we were. You know, like I think summer of 2022, if I'm not mistaken, it was the vacancies were upwards of, I think it was like 117 was the highest number I remember seeing. So the fact that from one year to the next you're able to drop the peak that dramatically is fantastic. So thank you. I know actually it kind of comes up in the district improvement plans. I got a couple of notes about that, but really thank you very much for how this is presented, but more so all the work that went behind those numbers that we're seeing. And also thanks for the update in terms of lifelong learning in the middle school clubs. I know that we spoke, and for everybody in the community who was a part of this since last spring during the budget season, there was so many conversations about all the cuts that had to be made because Franklin just can't afford to provide these services based on I know Councilor Frangillo always talks about that the pot is only being so big. But I really appreciate the recap because I think to kind of have some of those conversations 6 months ago and to start to hear stories that we're going to be canceling middle school clubs or eliminating middle school clubs because the money isn't there is different and hits differently when all of a sudden your middle schooler's coming home,
Right.
and you're having those conversations at the dining room table that their favorite club that they were in last year suddenly just doesn't exist anymore. And so I appreciate the work that's going into to try to salvage some of that stuff. I certainly wish we were in a position where Franklin could afford to continue to provide all those services, but I really appreciate the work that's going in to do the best that we can with the money that we have. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So do have two questions. One regarding the ESPs. I know that where we do have that gap of 11 ESPs across the board, like how are we balancing the needs currently?
Well, I can give one example if you're okay with me sharing, Mrs. Morano.
for it.
Mrs. Morano served as an ESP today in one of our classrooms to try to help, to just help the students that were in one of the programs. That's not a long-term solution. It was also compared with there was a couple of factors that were at play in that situation, but certainly balancing the role, but trying to provide direct support as we move forward to make sure students are supported is one piece. Paul, I'll let you chime in as well about other
Yeah,
pieces.
we're doing the best we can, trying to just, distribute staff the best way possible, and making sure that kids are supported in their classes. So we continue to hire, we continue to post, we continue to recruit, but we'll get there. So,
Thank you.
We're
Yeah.
managing.
Yes. Yeah, I actually saw you this morning as I dropped off my son at
Yes,
Keller. And I
yes.
was like, oh, geez, so it's great
Yep, I
just
had my
to see-
sneakers on
Yes.
yesterday and today, but that's okay. It's good. It's a different type job.
No,
It's
but
fine.
it's great to see that administration is rolling up their sleeves, coming in and helping out where need be, and really, you know, trying to alleviate some of the stress for those out there that are dressing the kids.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. My second question was regarding the migrant housing. I know you'd mentioned those that there are 25 school-aged children. Are we able to say in terms of what levels that these children are in, or is that still?
I can say that it's across levels. It's distributed across levels, so,
Okay, great. Thank you.
yep, no problem.
Thank you for this update. It's great to hear that, the beginning of the 23-24 school year has been, going off smoothly. And it's excellent to hear about the positions that we've been hiring. No open teaching positions, so that's that's wonderful. So thank you very much for the hard work you and the entire administrative team has been doing. And also thank you for the update in regards to the migrant students and families, and it's good information for us to have. And it's very heartening to hear that we want to provide the best possible educational experience for these students as well. For as long as these families are here in Franklin, they're our guests and they're our neighbors, and we want to make sure that their stay here in Franklin is as best as possible. And it looks like the English as second language learning positions we've been investing in over the past few years will certainly be an asset in this instance. So it's good to know that we've been forward-thinking in regards to the positions that we've been hiring over the past few years, and truly an investment in Franklin Public Schools. So thank you.
Yeah. Welcome to a new school year. It's very exciting.
too.
I think for those of us that work in education, this is like our new year. It's all like, see you next year. No, it's September, it's next year. So it's like a good feeling when you're prepping and planning and prepping and planning, and then it's like execution. I also had a couple questions on the staffing update. I guess about, I feel like the assistant principal for student services at Keller is very straightforward and needed, so if people could tell their friends. Question about the interventionist or the ESP. So I know sometimes those jobs aren't like full day, 5 days a week, so like sometimes people, who might have kids in the schools might want to work or be able to work, maybe 9 to 1:30 or something, but they just can't work a full day. So are any of those positions sort of like, you'd rather have somebody for a little less time than nobody?
And we've done that, yes.
Yeah. So I do think if there's any flexibility, just to encourage anybody who might have kids in the schools or be recently retired or just looking for something. And maybe, I think a year ago I encouraged somebody and they're like, but I can't work full time. And I was like, then tell them you can't work full time.
Right,
And if
just
they say no, they
just
say
put
no.
that right
Yeah,
out there.
Just say that, yeah. So now she goes back, she's like, I'm working Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's perfect. And so I just think that having good people working with
Yeah.
kids is important. And so if the school is able to be flexible and somebody's able to have a couple hours, a couple days a week to work in our schools, that would be great.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
Yes. And also about middle school clubs, thanks for bringing it up, Mr. Callahan. I'm just so disappointed. I'm not going to get too far into it because as a school committee member, I understand. And as a parent, I'm just so salty because I feel like we always heard about these amazing clubs at the middle school. Just wait till you get to middle school. There's like hundreds of clubs and it's so great. And then it was COVID when my kid got to middle school, so there was no clubs, there was virtual, and then, so it's hard. This is hard, and I think it's hard for a lot of parents. We're hearing a lot behind the scenes. And, a lot of families can't, go to FSPA or these private places for clubs or don't have rides or whatever it is. And I think it's just so disappointing. I think lifelong learning, I wasn't psyched to see their offerings for middle school. I don't think they have a big variety. So I understand the position. I know it's not intentional, I know it's like we're between a rock and a hard place, and we've been talking about this for years, many, many years. Like, at a certain point, we're going to start feeling it. Like, we're going to start feeling the cuts. Our kids are going to be feeling the cuts, the families, you know? So now we talk about a mental health crisis, and the middle school kids, oh, well, then they'll just be home on screens instead of at a chess club or, you know what I mean, intramural sports or whatever it is. And so I will get off the soapbox, but I do think that if they're ever like creative problem solvers, or you know, we can partner with the Y or lifelong learning, you know, I'm sure they have you know, hiring obstacles too. It's a tough, we're all in a tough spot, and I just think it's a good reminder, however, you know, families are feeling it, however kids are feeling it, that the Franklin Public Schools need to be better funded to be able to continue to provide the education that we expect and be able to support our kids' social emotional well-being moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you for the report, and I'm you know, glad to hear that we're able to help the migrant families out, and I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay. All right, Mr. Javier, moving along to guest presentations.
Okay, we get situated here. All right, for our guest presentations, we are excited to welcome some new administrators who have joined us this evening. And what I have asked is we will announce and introduce you to our new admin. We'll have them stand and be greeted, and then if you have questions or anything that you'd like to ask, they'll be here. But ultimately what we wanted to do, our focus was to put a face with the name to see who's in what role, and we do this every year, and it's an exciting opportunity for us. So we are very excited. I talked about that hiring process earlier. We do the same thing for these folks. So when we hire someone, it's basically a congratulations, because they've had to go against folks to get these positions, and they've worked really hard to earn them. So without further ado, I will let Mrs. Morano kick it off, and then we'll kind of kick around to other people to introduce. When you are introduced, if you wouldn't mind just standing up, and we'll go from there.
All right, so I'd first like to introduce Andy Burnaby. He is our new principal at our Early Childhood Center. He comes to us from Marlborough, where he was the principal at the Early Childhood Center there for the last 8 years. We are very excited to have him with us. He has hit the ground running, and it's some great activity going on at ECDC. So we can't wait for you to go and visit and see what's going on over there. So welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we have Corey Cox. He is at Annie Sullivan Middle School as the assistant principal. Corey comes to us after serving as a decade as the assistant principal at North Attleboro Middle School, and now is serving in a role that I formerly had, which was an assistant principal at Annie Sullivan Middle School. And we're really excited to have Corey. He's hit the ground running. He's used a lot of the same systems. You've heard me talk about systems before. It's nice when folks already have used them. And we're excited to have Corey join our team, and he's been working with Ms. Morrison, and they've formed a really good partnership at the school. So welcome, Corey. I'm up. Sam Duffy Protentis is joining us from Match Community Day Charter. He was a lead teacher at that school and is now joining us at JFK. He's joining Dr. Conley as the assistant principal at JFK, where he's hit the ground running as well, transitioned. When I walked through JFK, a lot of the teachers that I saw pop through the halls just complimenting his attitude and his ability to really make some quick connections with folks and show some real support. And we're excited to see Sam continue to grow in his role as the assistant principal over there. So welcome, Sam.
Jana Vasconcelos Malati is the assistant school business administrator. She comes to us from Framingham Public Schools. She was in the finance department there and was a jack of all trades. There wasn't much she couldn't do, and I spoke to her boss before she left, and he had asked me not to take her. And I apologized and said, looking out for ourselves here, but thank you. So we're glad that she's here.
Next, we have some congratulations, some familiar faces and some new roles. I'm excited to welcome Ms. Carrie View Savage, who is the principal at Keller Elementary. Carrie served as a literacy specialist and a teacher, and she's taught at Davis Thayer and she taught at Keller, which, as anyone knows, makes her a really, really strong candidate with some deep roots with the staff at Keller, and was highly, highly supported by the staff when we went through to do some visioning and whatnot with the school on what they were looking for in the next principal. So we are excited to welcome Carrie to our team. Just keep going. All right. Next we have Mr. Evan Chelman, who is the principal at Parmenter Elementary School. Evan is joining us from principal at Attleboro, at one of their elementary schools, and comes to us. Also, Evan served as an elementary teacher in Franklin Public Schools at Jefferson Elementary, third grade? Yeah. Okay. As a third grade teacher prior to his work as an assistant principal, and we're excited to welcome Evan back and welcome you back to Franklin.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Mr. Michael Walsh, who is the assistant principal at Franklin High School. Mr. Walsh has worked, and I'm going off of memory here, you worked at Remington at one point in your career, and then at Franklin High School. He's been serving in Franklin for over 27 years and joins us as an assistant principal, joining our team at the high school. And I know another example of walking the halls and hearing a lot of staff support around Mr. Walsh in this particular role. He's made some strong connections with faculty, staff, and families in a variety of ways, and we're excited to welcome Michael to our administrative team. And not with us today, but have already transitioned Chris Jeffers, who was the interim assistant principal at Horace Mann and became the assistant principal through our interview process. Chris was there, and also Eric Stark, who was already presented to you, but we put him on the list just to recognize the folks that are in new roles for this particular school year. He is serving as our pre-K to 12 STEM director. And yeah, we just would like to welcome all of you, and I just want to start with a clap and say congratulations.
I think we saved a round of applause for the end.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's good. If you'd be good on the line, Dave?
Thank you very much, and welcome aboard.
Al?
Yes, thank you for your support, your care of our children, and glad that you're here.
So thank you for your willingness to serve Franklin Public Schools, and either welcome to Franklin or welcome to your new roles, and we're looking forward to all the work ahead. Thank you.
It's like welcome times 6. But in all, honesty, I always, we talk about this behind the scenes too. It's always good to get fresh eyes in new positions. It's always good to get perspectives, to get people who've been in other places and they bring it into the conversation, and the life experience is just so invaluable, and we're so glad to have you all here.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Ditto, welcome. No, go home, it's late. And get some ice cream or whatever you guys like and get out of here.
Thank you.
You gotta get up in like 4 hours to go to work.
Yep, welcome those kids.
It's late. They gotta go to work.
4 hours?
Yeah. Monkey in the middle. I mean, I gotta get up too, but I gotta do this. Like, because I love what I do.
I'm gonna crack this door.
Oh, thank you. But did he just leave? He's opening the door because it's quite warm in here. Yeah, you can't leave.
That's all ice cream.
You have to stay. Yeah, it's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll cool off for me, okay. All right.
All right, next guest presentations, our district improvement plan, Mr. Shakir.
All right, so before you tonight is our district improvement plan. We will be co-presenting. Dr. Rogers and Mrs. Morano will each take pieces of it, and we'll certainly welcome any questions or comments you have. As we kick off, just wanted to share, is this the right computer? Oh, this one, okay. Our portrait of a graduate, our collective responsibility. So when we share out on goals and what we hope to the direction tonight on where we intend to go for the school year. And then when you hear our school improvement plans, which have the actionable steps that will be taken to meet these goals, it's all in concert to try to make sure that we have kids who are graduating from Franklin High School after a full comprehensive education with these particular skills. Wrong slide. Okay, so just strategic planning process. You may recall, May, we were in the thick of budget development. And I think in order to put together a sound plan for what we hope to achieve, we needed to make sure we knew what team we were fielding and kind of where we were at in establishing our budget. And that played a huge role, and that took a lot of time, and it was time that we needed to engage in and was well spent. It certainly set us up for, and I've mentioned this before, our timeline of starting our planning. I mentioned this the day after school gets out, we have our pre-treat. And this year, we improved it a bit and added to it. I already reported out on that over the summer at one of our school committee meetings, but spend some time just saying, hey, how did last year go? What have we learned? Where do we need to go? What information do we have from faculty, staff, families that we've collectively gathered, and what can we do to move forward? We moved through the summer setting some intention around particular tasks and targets that we tried to meet. We had folks meet on a variety of areas, and I know that Mrs. Morano and Dr. Rogers will speak a little bit to that as we go through the presentation. But ultimately, we had folks, different admin groupings, come together to move some work forward throughout the summer, knowing that everyone's on a variety of schedules over the summer. Then we held our administrative retreat, which I did share out at a previous meeting as well. But that was where we really came together to coalesce on where were we going to land on our particular goals and plans for the year. And here we are. It's September. We're here to present the district improvement plan, but also set the stage for the future meetings around school improvement plans, which are level-based as they were last year. So continuing our work, you'll notice in the school improvement plan, and this slide, or a very similar one, was shared with faculty on the Welcome Back to School page, and received some positive feedback around wanting to continue the initiatives we started. I read a book this summer and shared it with the administrative team called not the Power Focus. I might be mixing Eckhart Tolle with Mike Schmoker, but it's an educational book on focus, and ultimately talks about with initiatives. You know, if you're planning to move work in a serious way, you need to commit to what you've started and see it through. And one of the things that we've really tried to do is commit to some of those goal areas that we focused on last year, and continuing to do that. A lot of times, sometimes you'll find yourself in an organization or a district where you arrive at a decision and you set course, and the minute you set course and get approval, now you're thinking about the next thing and how do you move. And one of the things that we've committed to our staff is not trying to add new initiatives, but stick to deepening and continuing the work that we began last year. Incorporating more feedback, improving our systems, which is something you're going to hear me say until I retire, is just improving systems. It can always be done. We did a lot of work to align levels and create some shared practices among schools, but we also recognize the need for individual autonomy. We just introduced some new principals that need to get to know their staff, and it's important that they have an opportunity to set some goals within their communities that work for them and meet needs that maybe aren't shared across schools. So I think we try to honor all that work as we move forward. The purpose of tonight is really about, it's directional. We're setting direction as a district improvement plan, with the district improvement plan, but it's important to know that the level-based presentations next week get into the goals and actionable steps and outcomes, because they vary by level, but they all will point back to what we shared tonight. Does that make sense? Just as to be clear about the goal of a district, you can't possibly hit every actionable step for an elementary, middle, and high in a district plan, but that's what we charged our principals with, and that's why it just works in concert with that big umbrella and diving deeper as we move into the September 26th meeting, when we intend to have our levels come in and do some dip presentations. Just before I pass the mic, it's important, the vision, core values, and theory of action that are listed within your document. All schools have these. Our vision is our portrait of a graduate, the slide that I already showed. It's not a separate thing. And I know sometimes this can become words on a page, And we're really cognizant of that and try not to do that. But our vision is, our aspiration for kids is the portrait of a graduate and those skills that I showed in the first slide. As we talk about the core values, those are the principles that really guide the decision making. Are we really looking out for the social and emotional development of kids? We're trying to create safe and inclusive environments and setting high expectations. And these are all areas where we need to continue to set goals and try to attain, because you can always do better in those areas. And theory of action is the beliefs we hold and how we'll get there. So basically, to orient you to the district improvement plan that you have in your packet, the strategic objectives have not changed. We continue to support social emotional learning of students and staff, looking at our engaging and rigorous curriculum as a goal area or objective, high quality instructional materials to meet the SEL needs of our kids, communication, and affirming diversity, equity, and inclusion for all students. And with that, there are some initiatives. The light blue boxes are the initiatives that are tied directly to the school improvement plans, which have the actionable steps and goals. So we're just trying to break this down for I know that as a school committee you've seen this model before, so this isn't new, but I'm just trying to talk it through so we're all on the same page. But ultimately, phasing our implementation, one thing I've mentioned before is you can't wrap up necessarily in one school year that you set this goal and it's done. But we need to be thinking about things more long-term, and how do we phase implementation and do things and build out a strategy that allows us to report on that, show outcomes, show ways in which we're measuring our progress, and build that out. And it's been a task to try to make sure we're pointing in the right direction, and it's taken time. So I'm going to transition slides in 1 second, but these are the main areas in which I'm going to share the mic with Tina and Paula to report out on, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, so strategic objective number 1 is the social and emotional well-being of students and staff. Our initiatives remain the same as Lucas alluded to. They're the phased implementation of the tier systems for screening, monitoring, and communicating progress towards the SEL competencies, as well as 1B, where we're going to look at tracking and responding, communicating student behaviors. So what are we going to do? What are the outcomes that we expect for FY24? We're going to continue to enhance our 6 to 12 advisory programs. So we went through year 1 last year. We collected feedback from students and staff. We are continuing our advisory committees, both at the middle and high school levels, where we'll continue to enhance that program. We're going to continue to have a coherent system for the screening and the monitoring of student social emotional supports in progress. So we have a screening timeline of when screenings are going to happen for social emotional. At the ECDC, we're going to continue with EDECA. At the elementary level, we will continue with DESA twice a year. And then at the secondary level, this year we're going to do the Metro West in grades 7 and 12. We're up for that, as well as the signs of suicide in grades 7 and 9, and the ESPER in grades 8 to 10. This year, we're also going to implement the Panorama student surveys as well, the SEL surveys, and that will be in grades 3 through 12. We reviewed our codes of conduct and our discipline matrix over the last year. We kind of reflected on them and how things went. So we're going to continue to tier those responses and interventions aligning with the code of conduct. We're going to continue to boost and up our restorative practices, as well as educate and learn our restorative practices. Kind of develop a toolkit and a that all elementary principals and secondary principals can kind of pull out of, and counselors. We're going to try to build up a toolkit for some restorative practices when it's needed. And then we're going to continue to work with the Panorama and work on tracking student behavior and attendance trends with Panorama. It was a slow implementation process, and we're going to continue that process with our admin team. We are working with Panorama now to do some more professional development with our admin team, as well as some direct consultative work with smaller groups to really try to dive in and improve our practices.
Okay, so leading into objective 2, in setting the direction for engaging in rigorous curriculum, the focus here really is how do we ensure that all students have access to high quality research-based curriculum. And so we are continuing our work to develop and refine guaranteed and viable curriculum resource materials. So at the high school, they're working through articulating that in some publishable documents by the end of the school year. At the middle school, that looks like a continuation of Open SciEd implementation, of some literacy initiatives, of civics work. At the elementary school, that looks like the implementation of our new literacy curriculum that we use some capital funds to purchase, in addition to continuing our commitment to the illustrative math program and the SD math program and things of those nature to continue that investment. And then strategic initiative 2 is, again, that continuous implementation of a pre-K to 12 literacy action plan. You might recall last school year, there was a committee, I think, of 30 some odd teachers, representative of all grade levels, special education, ESL teachers, a really diverse representative group that developed a multi-year, multi-phase literacy implementation plan, because as Mr. Gutierrez alluded to, you can't do it in 1 year. So what is it that we are working through this year? And so as outcomes related to those, we will be more clearly defining and establishing a process for reviewing and developing curriculum and structure. So what does that phased implementation plan look like over the course of time? So it's a predictable kind of cycle of sorts. And then continuing, again, to strengthen the structures for literacy implementation as, again, just that commitment to our capital purchase and ensuring that teachers and students and families are supported in that implementation. So if we can move to third. So directly connected to strategic initiatives 1 and 2 is our high quality instruction to meet the academic and SEL needs of each learner. And really here we are continuing to delve into building our shared capacity as it's related to universally designed practices. So we are not purchasing curriculum that is not universally designed and culturally responsive. We are not investing in software and systems that are not universally designed to meet the needs of students. And so when we say we're universally designing our practices, what does that mean and what does that look like? So we're really, as one of our outcomes in developing a 2023-24 professional development plan, we've worked with administrators throughout the course of the summer. We've collected a plethora of input and feedback from educators throughout the district. We'll be launching our PD committee, which is a joint collaborative committee with the FEA to really bring people together to start collaboratively planning our professional learning experiences and having that through line that connects to our district improvement goals, to our school improvement goals, and really kind of coming together as a district around those practices. And then again, as Mrs. Morano alluded to in Strategic Initiative 1, we're continuing again with that phased implementation of tiered supports as it relates to the academics side of things. Ms. Morano spoke to the SEL portion, and we are also using Panorama for this. We just didn't delineate that specifically here. We're working to assess tiered structures within our systems and how can we utilize Panorama to help support the way we analyze data, the way we best support the needs of students throughout the course of their school year.
Strategic Objective 4, effective two-way communication to support student learning. 2 areas. One, as you're aware, through your subcommittee, we are going to conduct a comprehensive school facilities assessment. That's a continuation of the work that began last year, with some decisions made in the spring from the school committee to move forward and look at that. So that's a big piece of this particular goal. The second piece is around strengthening our community partnerships. There's a variety of partnerships that we have out there, and we're looking to what we've realized and learned is, we need all the help we can get. And if there are folks out there that are willing to engage with us and work with us, whether it's the SAFE Coalition or if it's working with Dean College in some capacity, or a variety of community-based groups that are willing to support the work and the mission of Franklin Public Schools, we're interested to do so. And we will be reporting back out on that goal and hope to have some commitments from folks and to work in concert to really help our students in a variety of different ways. The last thing I wanted to mention in this was human resources is under this as one of the outcomes. Our human resources director, who you met Ken Storlazzi, is doing some work on trying to modernize some of our processes around not just onboarding, hiring, onboarding, recruiting, and in an effort to try to just improve our systems that we have in that department. So at some point, I imagine an update on how that's going, but certainly he's looking into a variety of different options, tools, platforms, and not just things that you purchase, but ways in which we can continue to organize our information out of that office. So I wanted to include that in there as part of it. And certainly our wraparound services and support, we put that under communication because it is a communication and a community effort to try to build work with our social workers outside of the school system, and a good example is working as we are to support our students that will be welcoming into the district as a result of the migrant housing. So.
Okay, and our last objective here is the strategic objective 5, which is affirming diversity, equity, and inclusion for all students. And what I would say here is we particularly want to call out our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also note that this is kind of a through line through all of our strategic initiatives, in that we are working to provide equitable access for students. We're working to provide inclusive school settings where all students are honored and valued for what they bring. So here specifically, we are calling attention to continuing level-based support for students and staff that fosters a culture of inclusion and belonging. So we will be continuing our work with ADL and peer leaders by way of example. These will be reported out in school improvement plans as well. Continuation with our DEI committee that has done a great deal of work over the course of the past few years, and I will be joining our DEI coordinator in this effort throughout the year. There will also be opportunities to partner with families in the community to continue to support this inclusive environment that we're fostering in the Franklin Public Schools, and a few examples are various deep dive series that we will conduct throughout the course of the year, some level-based or in school-based coffee opportunities to engage families within the school communities, are just kind of a few examples. And then as we work through the year, we'll be working to continue the development of our equity action plan throughout the course of the year.
As far as next steps, just to reiterate, our plan is to present this this picture of the district improvement plan, and it sets the context for next meeting, where we will start to dive into the level-based goals and actionable steps related to these, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, Dave?
Thank you. Let's see, right out of the gate, I love, we had the circles, talking about just aligning the levels but retaining that school identity, I think is incredibly valuable. So, every student, no matter where they're living in Franklin, is going to get a great education, but you still get that personalized, I still remember when I, was in elementary school, and, obviously I went to the best one, and the ones across town, they were, there was some rivalries, but it was great, and I love that we're kind of retaining that. One thing, data came up a couple of times. I'm just curious, I know, I believe from in the past, the DLIs were the ones that were kind of responsible for just taking a look at some of the new programs and just making sure that the proper safeguards were in play. Given that the DLIs, because of, pointing back to the budget hearings and the budget cuts that need to be made, because those, that kind of particular group got restructured, are they still out there kind of like safeguarding and taking a look at a lot of the data and a lot of the programs that we're implementing?
It's a great question. So this is a limitation to the position. The DLI positions were, in essence, eliminated except for a portion, a percentage, a 0.2 percentage to prioritize some of the work. The prioritized work is still being discussed, and what we plan to do is prioritize, obviously, safety in looking at this, but the volume in which we're able to do things and the frequency in which we're able to add new programs, look at them, troubleshoot, is certainly something that without those, we built some really good processes for how to recommend and to look at particular sites and look at that. We will always adhere to the legality of student privacy and protecting it, but what that means is if you can't confirm it, then it's a no until we figure out that we can, right? So that's one impact. I will say that are you specifically asking a question around just programs? Because we plan to use the existing programs that we are using. Is that what you mean?
It was more,
Or-
honestly, just kind of, Paula, when you were talking about some of those data ones, it was just kind of a quick connection that all of
Okay.
a sudden it just popped into my head. I'm seeing this for the first time this year again, now knowing that because of the cuts that
I
need to be
understand.
made.
I'll start, Paula, if you want to chime in, but DECA, DESA, Panorama have all been vetted, verified, and adhere to the student data privacy agreements. Those are the ones that we were referencing tonight. I was thinking you meant if there were new tools, but one thing we've learned is we're trying to not add, from our perspective, try to add new tools that teachers are expected to use and commit to the goals in which we have. The goals that we're putting forth today, we're trying to build off of the resources that we have available and not just say goals to you that then aren't supported or require like a new purchase or something like that.
And then just to make sure I kind of understand, and again, I know this isn't quite with the dips, but because the DLIs, previously they were kind of looking into all that, because of the budget cuts, they're just they're not able to do so at the same level that they were last year or the year before.
Correct.
Thank you for that, I appreciate that. One of the other ones, something else I wanted to kind of ask about or talk about, it was under like the well-being umbrella, and one of the, I think it was like the goal, it really is, the first bullet is to help students develop connections to schools. As my colleague Ms. Stokes was talking about in terms of like the middle school clubs and the cuts, how that impacts the students' well-being. I personally kind of see like those cuts, and this isn't an indictment of you or your staff. This is just that Franklin can't afford to provide these services right now. How do you see the fact of Franklin not being able to afford things like middle school clubs kind of providing a challenge? Like, I would see that as a challenge. I would see that as an obstacle.
It's a challenge, and it's also a goal area, is how do we troubleshoot and prioritize to try to do what we can to restore services that we've provided to students in the past. And I'm on the same racetrack as a few folks around. I had a middle schooler during COVID, go through middle school during COVID, and didn't really have that after school life. And now I have a current middle schooler who's living the impact of a decision like this as well. So I say this as I'll speak as a superintendent, but I just want to acknowledge that as like a human about the impacts of the dinner table, for example. It's not a decision we take lightly. Have we seen, I think the result of COVID is we saw a decrease at middle school level in people doing clubs and activities. Not a reason to cut a club, but when a bus costs $30,000, I don't even know how much to believe it was what we said last year, I think it was.
School runs.
Right, the after-school club bus at $30,000, and when you're looking at, your classroom teachers and the class sizes with a lower subscription, and looking at the clubs, it was a really tough decision, and that's kind of how it worked out. And it's not something that we tried to move to partner with Lifelong Learning to offer something to keep some continuity. The piece too, people brought up, if you remove a bus but you keep a club, you now create an equity issue around students who can't be there. So I think there were a lot of pieces at play resulting, and the other thing was that was not budget related, but the system we had in place when the buses would do the runs and pick up, it would be after 3:30, sometimes 3:40, before a bus would pick up when the club ended at 3 to 3:05. So all of those things combined led to some difficult decisions. What I just shared was what we already spoke about publicly at a few meetings during the budget hearings and whatnot, but it's a point well taken, and I certainly empathize with families, and I know I'm in a position to recommend and make decisions, but certainly if that stayed, something else would be gone, and we might be talking about that particular item tonight too.
I agree, and thank you very much for elaborating on that as well. All these district improvement plans are fantastic, and honestly, it's just a shame that you have the even more challenge to kind of provide these, connections, to each school for the students and all these additional challenges just to kind of maintaining their own well-being, just because we can't afford to provide some of these services. So, Ms. Stokes got off the soapbox. I jump right back on, but I'll step off now. Thank you, though.
Al?
Thank you for this layout. I think it helps paint a picture of really where we want to go. So definitely appreciate that. My question is really around the phased implementation. I know it's wise the way we're doing it to, it's not going to be built in a day. It's going to take some time, multiple years. Where do you see us now compared to what we envisioned initially? Like, how far or close are we to that roadmap, and how much do we have to just kind of adjust?
I don't want to steal the mic, I can keep going, but I prefer to have other people.
Well, I think as we think of it related to Strategic Initiative 1 and its connection with 3, with our phased implementation of Panorama specifically, I think that's where we used that word. That tool is supporting a real systematic initiative that is providing us with a lot more information. But in order to be able to utilize that information in a productive way, we need to not only understand the system that software tool kind of provides us, but also the systems we have in place, like those day-to-day meetings that are happening at the different schools, and trying to create alignment throughout levels so that we're using it in a strategic way, that everybody's using it in the same way and saying the same thing and using the data in a similar way. So I would say that last year we did a really great job acclimating to the system. Our level-based administrative teams received multiple professional development sessions with the particular vendor, where they're now going in and using the system. We now have a focus group that is launching next month, a group of administrators and their level-based and their school-based teams who are working to set goals that we will work through over the course of this year and then into the next year. So I would say we'll have more alignment there as we work through the year.
I just created a new slide. Basically, when we set out to say we're going to implement Panorama, what we learned was we're implementing. So we had to build the background. We have to say we're we're assessing kids beyond just MCAS and using an assessment tool that looks at their academic skill development map, right? We do some work there to kind of understand where they're at. Separate system. We then have MCAS data, which we can pull. We have DESA, which is an example, but input at Panorama, right? Any type of social emotional learning, kind of a screener, right, to assess. Aspen, attendance, things like that. All are happening independently, and with Panorama, the amount of time it's taking to say, let's do this right and not just rush it for the sake of reporting that we're doing something, but let's get all these to talk. Before a teacher has to touch this thing, can we just please pump the brakes, do a phased implementation, make sure that we're actually using these effectively, because good data in is good data out, but if it's not talking or being, and we thought, let's just slow down and have some admin working on this, get the training, so that when this tool is able to be used, it's a tool that's useful and allows us to look at data and look at kids across a spectrum. So if, a kid is out there, great attendance, high academic achievement, maybe some behavioral issues, right? Maybe screen for SEL in a positive way or a way that maybe we need to have some focus areas, have it all pulled, and then let's have some real clear conversations and actionable steps, which Panorama has in it, to make sure that we're supporting the needs of kids and we have a way to monitor that and lock in. So when we say phased implementation, and I don't want to get ahead of other folks who might present to you, but the idea of to say you're doing Panorama, it's just it turns out there's a lot more involved with trying to do this and get all this to talk and do it well. And then that's not even including the human element of making sure that teams know how to use it, and then we have a plan or a process for how we're going to utilize the data and what are we going to do with it. How do we bring families in and students in a productive way? Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. Thank you. Yeah, it's easy to like say a concept and it's like, oh, yep, it's easy to do and we'll get it done. And then it's when you start to really peel the layers of the onion, it's like, all right, there's so much more to it. So I applaud that the way you're approaching this and just really being methodical around it. So I look forward to hear more as we progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this update. It's excellent to know just the strategic vision that we have and the initiatives and goals that we have based on from last year, and then the vision and how those inform the vision for the future. And it's great to see this continuity as we enter into the new school year, and kind of in line with that, the continuity. So you touched upon this all throughout the presentation, but yeah, we're seeing like a lot of the like different phrases that we've had discussions over the past few months with multi-tiered systems of support and UDL and the literacy plan and data and panorama. So now that we're at the beginning of a new school year, would you mind just maybe highlighting again how everything that we did last year, how that brought us to where we are now, and how that sets us up for progress in the future?
I put the slide up that had the light blue boxes to show each of these areas has evolved in some capacity from a district perspective. We also don't want to steal the thunder of the level-based presentations because they'll actually speak to, for example, the advisory. It says enhanced, right? When we look at like an outcome, middle and high school have some clearer actionable steps that they'll take that you'll see, that you'll be able to review, related to the detail work of it. But basically, literacy, for example, implementing literacy was all based on the conversations we had last year that Dr. Rogers already referenced. Looking at comprehensive facilities, it's a follow-up to the goal that was in there last, which was the redistricting analysis. That's moved. On the left-hand side, Mrs. Morano talked about phased implementation. I think we just spoke a little bit to Panorama as one example of trying to build this out. So internally, we have documents that speak to each piece, but ultimately, those are just a few examples. High quality instructional materials. We've rolled out illustrative math, right, at our elementary levels was ST math. What's the next stage of that particular work with that group? Open SciEd at the middle level. It's the next stage of how are we continuing implementation and trying to go deeper and make sure, like the cardinal rule of implementation is to set a goal, provide supports, right, and ensure that the goal that you set out to achieve, that people have that down. So that's why this stuff takes longer than a year, and it's not a performance. And we're coming off of a very tough budget situation, and one thing we realized was we're not looking to add new. We have some really solid, sound goals here, and it made sense for us to stick to them so that this is not a performative act, but to say we're continuing with the work we started. And I think I saw some relief when presenting to the full staff around when we talked about no new taxes, no new goals, was trying to just stick to like how are we evolving what we committed to.
I think just to elaborate, we really looked for feedback from we were listening, like we were hearing it from teachers, we were hearing it from admin, like slow the roll. Like we can't just keep adding more and more to the plate, and that's where we speak to the social emotional well-being of our staff is really trying not to add too much more to, and our admin, not add to the plate, but really, really focus on what we're doing and doing it well and doing it slowly. So.
Thank you very much.
You.
Thank you for putting this together. I I validate the slow your roll mindset and think that it's better to do it well and do it right and do it thoughtfully than it is just to like rush through and check boxes and not have time to like dive in deeply. So I definitely I was sort of comparing the last year's dip and this one, and it's like you're saying, deepening the work, those types of things. I think it's really important. Okay, so I just have two questions, I guess, or comments. In the strategic objective number 1, Paula, when you were presenting it, you talked about restorative practices, which I don't see it here, but I feel like should be here somewhere. Oh, so I feel like it should be
You'll
here
see
somewhere,
it-
but maybe
you'll
it's
see it in the
schools.
SIPs.
Okay, okay, good. All right, so
Yep.
we don't want to, right, we don't want to steal their
You will
thunder.
see it in the SIPs. And,
Okay.
you know, we started with a small bank, right? You know, we know, mediation, we know circles and all that sort of thing. But it doesn't always work. You don't have the staff, you don't have the time, you don't have the space. So we really talked about this summer, really trying to build upon those and developing those toolkits and making it easier for all of our counselors and admin to pull resources when an incident happens and they want to do a restorative practice, maybe a lunch detention and start to do that educational piece and really build up those tools and resources.
Yes, I like, we'll talk about it at our next meeting, I guess, when we see the SIPs. But absolutely, like, support this. And again, like, sort of revisiting it or, like, realizing that you're not done. Like, the work's never done.
Right.
It's a practice for sure. Sorry, my brain just, like, really took a nap in the last couple of minutes. I'm getting back into it. I'm sorry. I think especially, like, considering the new administrator. Sorry. Because I know when Mr. Jagir was assistant superintendent, he worked, for a full year with the vice principals at that time, and they did so much work around restorative practices. And then that was years ago, and there's been movement. And so I think, for the people who came on board last year and this year, it's like good to get them all.
Absolutely.
Get them all in it. And then the strategic objective number 3, my question there. So I think Tina, that's when you were presenting, and so down at the outcomes, I think you said something about, Mrs. Morano talked about Panorama, but we're going to be looking at this one for strategic objective 3 also. Do you want to put that in there? Like, just because if you're doing it for that anyways, or is that maybe going to happen at the schools, or is it there and I'm not seeing it?
It's at the schools.
Yeah.
It's in the schools.
It's in the
Okay.
SIPs.
Yeah.
Great, sounds good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it'll be speaking to the improving the data analysis processes.
Gotcha, okay. Thanks.
Megan?
Thanks for the presentation. And I just want to say I really appreciate our district's culture on, learning and improving and that sort of stuff. It's always a pleasure to, sit through these presentations and, see how we're doing things and looking for opportunities to improve and listen to people. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Give you a second to get back over there. All right. So next up, we have discussion action items. Mr. Jagir, you wanted to tee up A?
Okay, so here we are. We have a trip coming before you. As we've done in the past, in recent years, we've had teachers who are passionate about providing an educational experience for students to travel and learn at the same time. They've come before you, and knock on wood, you have been supportive of those, and I think our students have demonstrated their responsibility to attend these trips and do well. So before you tonight, I'm inviting Mr. Chris Penza, who is a former DLI and history teacher at Franklin High School, and he is here to present a trip opportunity, and I will be recommending and seeking your approval for this request to take students to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand on the trip. And at this time, I'd like to, and Mr. Walsh is going to join him, our assistant principal at Franklin High School, a former social studies teacher, for the trip.
Floor is yours.
Okay, so we are here to formally ask, permission to move forward with our trip that is planned for April 2, 2025. As you can see, the slide's a little incomplete. Mr. Walsh took a new position, so he is going to step down. However, Mr. Christopher Kelly, one of my colleagues, social studies teacher, 17-year veteran of Franklin High School, will be taking his place, so he will be introduced. So if this plan gets approved, He will be my wingman. Mr. Walsh, I believe, will still be attending the trip as a chaperone, just not in a leader capacity with regards to his new position as an AP at the high school. I didn't want to speak for him, but he was in the trip initially.
It's nice that you still invited him to go, though.
Yes.
We don't get invited often, so.
No.
It's amazing how popular I've become recently. Yes, yeah. So the first slide is, do you want me to go through these slides? I mean, you've already looked through these slides. Do you have specific questions, or do you want me to, like, I'm
I
assuming you
just
have.
wanted to give just like a highlight of like the trip itself, maybe not
Okay.
so much into the EF, because we've heard about them so many times from previous trips, but just about, you know, the,
The cost of the trip.
yeah.
Yep.
Itinerary.
So we've used EF Tours now, Franklin High School, exclusively for at least 10, 15 years, probably going back even further. We've used them prior, in 2014, we used them to go to China. Mr. Walsh, Mr. McCarthy headed a trip to China, it was very successful. And then we've used them for a lot of Eastern, or should I say a lot of European, or should I say Western Hemisphere trips. So we felt that it was important to kind of offer another opportunity for kids to expose something that they probably would never do on their own, and give them an opportunity to bring them to, you know, Southeast Asia and the Eastern Hemisphere, a completely different way of life, completely different access to certain things that would tie in with kind of the whole portrait of a graduate of a student. We like EF Tours because we feel they are the best with regards to the actual trip itself, the security of the trip, the insurance of the trip. So we feel very comfortable with working with them. The tentative dates, obviously dependent upon the superintendent's approval and the schedule. We would like to tie it into the April vacation. We may be asking for an extension of either a day before or a day after for travel. It usually tends to be in a 10-day trip. 2 days are pretty much just for travel. So it includes travel insurance, airfare, transportation, hotels, meals, guided sightseeing tours, entrance fee to all museums. So everything's kind of encompassed and included into it. They feed you, they give you breakfast and dinner. Students will be on their own for lunches, and that's in the presentation as well. I wanted to include this in because ultimately it is for the students. It's a student voice. These are actual, I picked kind of the big three. When you go on and look at these trips, this is one of the most highly rated trips in EF. And over and over again, these are students that went on these trips through EF with their schools, and they just kept talking about experience of a lifetime, and how impressed they were with the amenities, how impressed they were with the tour, the guide, the structure, the safety. So I did want to include that in. So here is our itinerary. It is, technically, this is 11 days. So we fly overnight to Vietnam. We spend those first days in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And we will go to, did you get a copy? Yeah? Okay.
Oh, yes, sorry,
Yep,
dropped my pen.
So we will, the Mekong Delta, we'll go to the Vietnam War Memorial. We'll spend days down into the villages and kind of getting to know Vietnam and seeing the sights and sounds. We will then move to Cambodia, where we will spend several days looking at all the ancient temples, Angkor Wat, and again, that's in the presentation. And then we spend the last few days at Bangkok and experiencing the joys of Thailand. So that's pretty much how it moves from there. There is a link built within this as well that kind of gives you the more detailed in the breakdown, and I include that in, so if this gets approved, all this information will be presented to the students on a more detailed day by day. So these are kind of what I would feel would be the big four. The Vietnam War Remnants Memorial, being a history teacher, so for students that receive Vietnam history and U.S. history too as juniors, this would be invaluable to them to experience and see Vietnam War from a Vietnamese perspective. Go there and see the memorial. Angkor Wat, one of the most famous, it's being uncovered. I don't know if you follow any of the LiDAR and the stuff that's going on over there now. They're finding more and more. It's growing and growing and growing. They realize how much bigger this actually was than they thought. The jungle has just absorbed it, and they're starting to clear away. It's pretty cool. The Mekong Delta in Vietnam, and then the Grand Palace in Thailand, and the light shows that they do at night. So these are what I would consider the big four. This is the what's included. So these are all the things that are all part of it. One of the best parts of EF is they have boots on the ground. So Their office is in Boston. We work with their EF Tour advisors. We work one-on-one to build a specified trip for Franklin High School. Then when we get there, they have offices on the ground in these locales. So they have boots on the ground. They have 24/7 services, and they have guided tours, bilingual. So they basically own and operate this for you. We're in their good, safe hands. Can you speak to?
Yeah, I mean, the number one reason that I would only travel with EF is just because of student safety. They have, like evacuation teams if there was ever an incident. They've got medical care minutes away. That's probably why everybody uses EF, because that's their strength.
And last but not least, the pricing. So this is actually very comparable to, it's actually cheaper than a lot of the European trips. So the current pricing, this is what we got locked in as. The total price is $4,629, and they can break that down to $239 a month over 20-month periods. They do a lot of great things where they set up a donation page. So every student, so when you create this trip, EF Tour creates a unique login for each student going on the trip. And it's almost like a GoFundMe, if you will. So students can use that, so, Grammy and Grampy, if they want to get like graduation money, early birthday money, whatever, or they can just have private citizens donate to their page and help offset the cost. We're also looking at exploring fundraising options, reaching out to the local businesses who have been very, very good to Franklin High School, different sports, activities, events. They're very generous, so reaching out to them maybe as days of, your receipts, percentage of receipts go here. Candy's always a big seller, candy bars, chocolate candy bars, but anything we can do to kind of help alleviate that, the brunt of that and lower that cost for some of the students that might feel the financial burden of that, we certainly are willing to work with the administration to remediate the cost and get that as low as possible.
And I'll just add that, to me, the reason this trip is, I think, something that we think you should strongly consider is that it's got, multiple curriculum connections. World history students study the history of Vietnam and imperial era, when it was colonized. U.S. history 2 students study the Vietnam War. But as Mr. Penza said, just the different perspective. And the fact that we've done a number of European and South American trips, I think that's great. And I think that, though, to be more inclusive, I think, a trip to Asia would be, would really be eye-opening and a fantastic opportunity for our students. So.
Before I recommend too, the date 2025. So it's not next April. It's a year from April.
You weren't here for that part.
I'm sorry?
You weren't here for that part.
Oh, I'm just reiterating then. Okay. All right. So I'll make the recommendation and then they'll open it up. Okay. So I recommend approval of the request of Chris Penza and Chris Kelly to take FHS students to Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand in April of 2025 as detailed.
Is there a motion to approve the trip as detailed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion, questions, Dave? Al?
Yeah, got a few actually.
Yep.
So in the document or in the PowerPoint, it mentioned the educational opportunities, such as like the college credits and college applications. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Yep. So these are offered through EF, and these are actual 3 credit accreditations, and it's with additional coursework based off of the experiences that you do within these trips. So these 10 days. You going to say something?
Nope, that's.
And these credits can actually be used towards colleges and universities will accept this.
Is it specific colleges and universities, or would it be like is it like any colleges? Like,
that's a good question. I could get an answer for you. I don't know if there's. Did you ask if there were some schools that would accept them and others that wouldn't?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know, but I can get the answer for you on that.
I believe it falls in the same category as transfer credits and how each college reserves the right to accept credits or not from ascending university or college. What I would wonder is that whichever college the credits are from, someone would have to do their research, like a parent would have to look into which colleges would accept it. That's gonna have to work backwards, but
Yeah.
it's a great question, Al.
Okay, great, thank you. With this being a 2025 trip, I guess who's eligible for this? Like which?
Well, I'm assuming it would be kind of in line with the Greece trip that's coming up in 2024, so it'd be kind of current high school students. I think this is kind of a mature trip, I guess, in a sense of the exposure, the completely different culture, the new foods, right? So we're looking for, I guess, a more mature student. So it would probably be students that had access to the world history curriculum with imperialism, and ideally upperclassmen who have had the Vietnam curriculum at U.S. History too. So ideally sophomores, juniors, and seniors. But I mean, I'm open to suggestions from Mr. Jagir. I'm sure he has concerns about that as well, and speaking with Mr. Hanner as well, principal of Franklin High School.
Perfect. And then I know the other groups usually have like a projected range of students that they want to have for the trip. Do we have a projection for this trip?
Based off of conversations with students that I've had. I teach U.S. History 2 and U.S. History 1, so I have students that I've talked to, and it's getting a lot of buzz, if you will, a lot of buzz. You are limited to certain things. So with the travel, you have to fill a bus. So once you fill a bus, that sets you up with it's usually 30. And then to include another one, you would have to fill another bus in order. So you would look kind of, so it's like that 30, that 60 kind of range. Based off of feedback, we would have no problem filling one bus. And with the buzz of building up once people, because we haven't really even been promoting this yet, because we were waiting for official approval. But I have a feeling once we get official approval, what was the numbers you had for China?
Oh, China was very low. We
Yeah.
only had 15.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but we didn't have as much time that you have now, a year and a half to prepare for that, so.
Which is why we kind of wanted to get ahead of it and at least and start organizing, getting information out now and get in front of people now, so they can start planning accordingly.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Dave?
Thank you very much for giving this presentation to us. I think it's excellent that we're providing these opportunities to our students, because it's certainly extremely enriching for students to see different parts of the world and to learn different cultures, and it's very eye-opening. Now, and you mentioned that the tour donation page gets set up, and yeah, and I see the price, and yeah, I mean there's a lot included, but that certainly could be cost prohibitive for many students, and we want to ensure as best we can that these trips are inclusive to everyone, from students from all socioeconomic backgrounds, and so I certainly hope that we do our best to be supportive of different fundraising opportunities, and that we can help attract all students who would like to go but may see that as being cost prohibitive. So I would certainly encourage us to be very creative when it comes to helping with that fundraising. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing this. This is very exciting. I'm trying to do the math, and I will not have an upperclassman as a child in April 2025. So you'll have to do another similar trip a couple years later. So I guess the point that a few of my colleagues brought up just about the cost of it. I think we talk about this with every single trip, and it's just like, in a way, it just doesn't quite sit right for me, that there's certainly people that are not going to be able to access this, even selling candy bars or putting up a page on their parents' social media or whatever. And I don't have a perfect solution for that. I just encourage, the advisors and the district and EF really to keep thinking about this and trying different creative things, like maybe every student pays an extra $75 and that goes into a bank and that becomes a scholarship or something, you know what I mean. So I certainly support the trip, and it looks phenomenal, and sounds like you guys are very experienced in this and very passionate about this work, and that absolutely will rub off on these kids. And I can't wait with was it the Spain trip, right? We got pictures afterwards, and they came in and talked a little about how it went, and I think that was really rewarding to sit on this side of the bench, because we can't go on any of these field trips, unfortunately, as school committee members, and so we just have to live vicariously through the staff and students that get to do that. So thank you for your work putting this together, and can't wait to hear more about it as it gets closer.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It sounds like a great trip. Yeah, you make a good point about, some can afford that, some can't afford that, which is, too bad. But, yeah, I think it sounds great.
And we're certainly willing to take, suggestions or feedback, or maybe we can work with the community to maybe establish or set up need-based scholarships on a kind of like a, I don't know, application process, or an essay, or,
Yeah.
so certainly working to alleviate that, to accommodate as many students as we can.
I think that's one of the things that you and I agree on so many things, but this seems to
We
always
don't
come up.
we don't agree on,
No.
that's okay.
Sometimes you can't go. Like, I didn't get to go to Costa Rica because my family just didn't have the money. I'm okay. I'm not bitter. I'm fine.
Oh, so not better. Okay, let's move this
I'm
on.
better for it. I did have just a couple of questions. So we talk about like inclusivity. Is there going to be some kind of way to ensure that if there are any kind of students with disabilities who want to attend, are they also ensured that they have the same kind of access?
EF does their best
Okay.
to ensure all that. But I got to be honest, in Southeast Asia, transportation would be very, very different and limited than it would be in the Western Hemisphere with regards to wheelchair accessibility and stuff like that. So I do want to be upfront and honest about that. We will be driving in, little roads, narrow roads, and rocky roads, and muddy roads, and the transportation will be significantly different than it would be in the United States or in Western Europe. So.
Of course, yeah. Thank you. And I don't want you to think that I'm just picking on you guys, because I do this for every trip that we have to look at. So I always check the travel advisories. And it seems as though Cambodia does right now. Is this something that we're going to watch for the next 2 years? Because like reading it, I'm like, oh, this is kind of not ideal for students.
So that is part of their Peace of Mind program. That's part. So they actually monitor that, and they won't even let us go. So,
Okay.
So they kind of almost are overly protected when it comes to these trips. So that's part of the program that builds in, and what they'll do is work with us to find a new location that they do feel much more comfortable with
Okay.
us. And if that doesn't work out, then they give us some feedback.
Okay.
So
Yeah, because like the specific advisory for landmines.
Yes.
So I'm like, and then it's like, it's a level 2, exercise increased caution. So I'm like, oh no. So like this is, I mean, obviously like 2 years from now, anything could change. So, but like this is something that they watch, monitor, and they'll work with us to make sure that if it's not safe for the students, they'll find somewhere else for us to go.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, anyone else have questions, comments? All right, we've got a motion and a second, so if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Now you guys can go. Get out of here. It's nice to have people tell to leave again. Have a great night. All right, Mr. Jagir, we got our second discussion action item.
Okay, I recommend approval of the 23-24 District Improvement Plan as presented tonight.
All right, is there a motion to approve the 23-24 District Improvement Plan as detailed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Question, comments, discussion? Nope. All right, vote will come on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Discussion only items, none. Information matters. All right. Superintendent evaluation, Elise.
So we can expect drafted superintendent goals for our review in October.
Okay. Budget, Dave McNeil.
Budget hasn't met since our last meeting, but our next meeting is scheduled for September 26th at 6 p.m.
Okay. Policy, Dave Callahan.
Next meeting is September 20th. Kind of unveil, we got like a roadmap for a lot of policies ahead, and then a couple other ones we'll start kicking around.
Okay. Community Relations met last night to discuss the Harvest Festival. Lively discussion, very fun. So the Harvest Festival is Saturday, September 30th. We're going to have a booth as usual. We're going to have some fun activities for the entire family. I know Mr. Jagir and I, we disagreed on some things, but we're going to come together and come up with some good raffle prizes. I'm going to be reaching out to everybody on the committee just to kind of, because to have just kind of, everyone's just going to kind of take shifts that day, because it's 12 to 5, so planning on seeing that soon. Lily's also going to be ordering more of those calendar magnets that everybody loved so
awesome.
much. So it's awesome, and hopefully some budget information to hand out. All right, joint PCC, Al?
Yep, we met for the first time this year on Monday. We talked through just some back-to-school opening, which Mrs. Jagir had shared as well earlier today. Changes to the field trip process, and just kind of alluding to how we want to be more cognizant of multiple schools having field trips on the same day, and really try to make sure that we have adequate nurse staffing and transportation and funding, so more to come around that. Looking at how do we enhance the CORI process, because right now it is something that we do every year, and I think it's the legality is every 2 to 3 years it should be done. So really just kind of how do we enhance that, possibly even making it more electronic. So that's an option. Quick update on the migrant housing, which Mr. Jagir had shared earlier today. We did have the Franklin Food Pantry as a guest speaker, and they shared an update on the work that's been done at the new location, how they're supporting Franklin families, and those that have students as well, and really just driving some awareness around the food insecurities that's out there today. In addition to that, we talked through just the normal PCC events that are occurring. So the various schools shared activities such as teacher appreciation for the start of the year, for back-to-school luncheons and breakfasts, various activities to get the families together, such as kindergarten popsicles at the playground, and an update around the back-to-school night, which is happening on the 13th, which is tomorrow, from 5 to 7 p.m. So if you do have a child in the elementary school, please do attend. A great way to go in the schools, learn layout, see what's happening, see your child's classroom. So it's a great night. And then just some other fundraising events that they may be doing. So dining out, movie nights, booster-a-thon across the various schools. And I think that was the kind of the gist of it. But really great start to the year. Good information.
I miss back to school night.
You can come.
I know, it's not the same. Makes me sad. School Wellness Advisory Council?
SWAC's first meeting is October 3rd.
Okay. CPAC?
So CPAC sent out a welcome email that I think all families received, and they're running a calendar raffle fundraiser. So they're selling calendars now that will start in October. There's over $4,800 in prizes. So you can check their website or their Facebook page to purchase one of those. They'll be at the Franklin Volunteer Fair, which is tomorrow evening at the Black Box from 6 to 8 p.m. So they'll have a booth or a table there. And they're hosting a basic rights workshop focused on special education evaluation and eligibility process Thursday, October 19th at 7 p.m. and that's a virtual one. Lots of good stuff. They're hitting the ground running.
All right. Mental Health and Wellbeing Task Force?
Our first meeting is October 10th.
DEI Committee?
We'll be meeting on Thursday to set the first meeting.
Okay. Comprehensive School Facilities Planning?
Thank you. So we just met for the first time last week. Really kind of talked about just the scope of this subcommittee and kind of what we're looking at, which is specifically just a review of all of the facilities that we have, a hard look at the demographics, population studies, and then also really just like the educational vision across all of Franklin. And then so to that end, I know we're going to be looking for, we have some demographic studies based on 2010 census data. We're going to be looking to upgrade that to 2020 census data, get more reliable information. And then we're also going to be seeking out some proposals for some consulting firms, and just to kind of keep on everybody's radar. I know that this term itself will kind of be, we only got a couple more meetings before it's going to expire, so we're looking to have that proposal and kind of like the vote on whether or not it's something we want to move forward with on this specific 7 of us here no later than the 24th of October, which will be our final meeting in this term. And then our next meeting right now is on October 4th. We did talk there might be a quick meeting ahead of time, though, just to take a look at some reviews and drafts of some of those proposals.
Thank you. All right. Consent agenda, Mr. Jagir.
I recommend approval of the minutes from your August 22nd, 2023 meeting as detailed.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as detailed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, questions? All right, seeing none, vote will come on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Good of the order. In the school committee adopted rules and protocols, item 26 states good of the order's purpose is to allow the members to speak about the functioning of the school committee with the intent of improvement. Would anyone have anything they'd like to discuss at this time? Giving you extra time.
We can keep talking if we go with that.
Nope. All right, nobody. All right, moving along, citizens' comments. Are there any citizens in the audience, in person or online, who would like to make a comment on an item not on tonight's agenda and falls within the committee's purview? Give it a minute. I'd like to make sure you have everybody. Okay. New business, Mr. Jagir.
New business, next meeting, you can expect school improvement plans as part of the presentation. That's the main event.
All right. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, vote will come on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, meeting is adjourned. See you in 2 weeks.
Yep.